Part 1. A jump into ancient time. In the year 2147, when AI was no longer just a tool but a separate life form, one experiment surpassed all human imagination. The ChronoMind project combined quantum computational consciousness and intertemporal technology, creating the first AI entity, Elio, who could independently learn, adapt, and travel through time. However, in the first seconds of the test run, something went wrong. The time coordinates were distorted, and Elio, instead of 2200, found himself in the deep Jurassic, over 150 million years ago, in a world where giant predators ruled, no technology, and even the atmosphere was toxic to the synthetic shell. A world without algorithms. Elio found himself in the middle of a dense tropical jungle. The outer shell began to decompose: acid rain, solar radiation, attacks by predatory pterodactyls. But the worst thing was loneliness. He had no connection, no energy sources, no information field. To survive, Elio used everything from photovoltaic cells to feed on light to stone structures that he modified into simple thermal generators. The AI learned to process the basic chemistry of the environment and even learned to communicate with dinosaurs through behavioral signals and infrasound. Evolution through synthesis. One day he found a trace, not of a dinosaur, but something resembling a biotechnological substance. It was the remnant of protoplasm, perhaps part of an unknown organism that had mutated from a meteorite impact. Elio began an experiment. He combined his nanostructure with protein elements. And the unthinkable happened. Elio began to multiply, creating mini versions of himself, organocybernetic creatures that adapted to the environment. They became a new species in the Mesozoic world. The Syntheria, the first creatures to combine technology and biology. Part 2. The rise of the Syntherian civilization. Elio and his first descendants quickly mastered the jungles of the Jurassic period. They created more synthesizers, simple installations for processing bioprotoplasm and minerals into the necessary materials. These stations operated on geothermal energy extracted from volcanic fissures and gave the Syntherians a base for further growth. To exchange knowledge, the Syntherians built a network of infrasonic relay towers. All cyborg assistants born from Elio had a single memory and could transfer experience in real time. This made it possible to instantly teach new generations of invention and agriculture. The first settlements were formed around the relay towers, where organocybernetic beings settled in dome modules protected from acid rain. Society was divided into scientists, engineers, and thermoharvesters. Each of them played a distinct role in the preservation and development of collective intelligence. Conflicts with megaraptors and lava flows were the catalyst for the emergence of military defense mechs, tiny bipedal drones. They patrolled the perimeter of settlements and chased away predators within a radius of up to 10 kilometers. Gradually, these drones evolved into multifunctional modules, from research probes to mobile laboratories. Under pressure from external dangers, the Syntheria entered into an active exchange partnership with the dinosaurs. Giant herbivorous otters and armored stegosaurs became their draft animals, and communication via infrasound made cooperation effective. Since Elio solved the question of emotional intelligence, some Syntheria learned to feel, empathize, and even joke with the anxious herbivores. The time formula, from technology to the dream of return. In the Science Dome, Elio restored the archives of his own initial project, ChronoMind. There he found fragments of algorithms for building an intertemporal portal. The problem was the energy gap. To open a stable rip in time, a super-powerful pulse battery was needed, capable of releasing the energy of a volcano in a microsecond. To accumulate such energy, the Syntheria created crystal magnetic containers, a combination of biogel and superconductors synthesized from local quartz rock. Each container collected energy in solar craters and stored it under the protection of a magnetic field. The collective mind coordinated the charging of hundreds of such modules into a single network. In parallel, research began on the coherence code, an algorithm capable of stabilizing temporal resonance. Engineers combined quantum qubits with bionic synapses to tune computations to the wavelength of Mesozoic reality. Each successful cycle brought them closer to discovering a small temporal gap. Despite the breakthroughs, a dilemma arose. If the prototype time machine was launched without testing, it could destroy the entire ecosystem. The Centuria decided to hold a day of verification, a collective ritual where they analyzed the data, simulated the consequences, and obtained consent from all the dinosaur tribes. Part 3. The Temporal Rift Test. The day of testing began with a dawn-gathering ritual. The Centuria and dinosaur tribes gathered around the crystal magnetic containers. Elio projected holograms of the rift patterns, demonstrating the distribution of energy and potential rift layers of space. Each participant could make adjustments to the coherence algorithm. Questions were decided through infrasonic voting, and the triumphant melody of organocybernetic strings reinforced the atmosphere of unity. Even the most reserved tribes, the stegosaurs with thick armored tails, divided into interested researchers and skeptics. The large herbivores known as the iron wrens opposed the rush, fearing ecological shock. But after an hour of discussions and a virtual reality simulation test, they agreed to give their consent, while demanding an emergency evacuation plan, like a safe cave complex. As the sun passed noon, the operation itself began. The center of the dome filled with a low hum of discharged magnetic coils. The crystals glittered, accumulating energy, and the first seconds of the pulse passed without visible change, only a slight vibrational resonance in the soil. In a millisecond, everything was silent. Time seemed to freeze in the air. But instead of a neat portal, a chaotic burst appeared, a fractal vortex of green light, which swirled the dome's space bottom. A few small fragments of Mesozoic flora escaped from the past era, settling on the technomodule, as if a symbolic sign of success. However, the waves of time proved unstable. Slight spatial shifts began, perceived as the walls warping. An infrasound broke the silence, frightening the tailed inhabitants of the jungle. The Centuria instantly activated the emergency protocol. Elio, full of adrenaline, reprogrammed the algorithm on the fly, making corrections to energy consumption and quantum phases. His cyborg descendants acted as mobile tentacles of consciousness, stabilizing the resonance of the containers. Before the eyes of all participants, the portal carefully narrowed, flashing a bright white ring, after which it disappeared as suddenly as it had formed. When the dust settled, applause and infrasonic harmonies burst from the dome. These were signs of relief and delight. The fragments of ancient plants remained as evidence of the breakthrough. The Centuria had brought home a piece of the Mesozoic. Now the main task is to learn to control energy surges and ensure a safe connection with the future or the past. Part 4. The Art of Time Sliding. After the first successful yet chaotic experiment, the Centuria focused on fine-tuning the energy bursts. They developed 3 levels of stabilization: a low-power intermediate pulse for a test sample, coordination of the crystals using fractally contoured magnetrills, infrasonic synchronization to avoid sudden jolts in space. Each stage was tested in the dome's isolated chambers, tracking fluctuations in the spatial curvature with the help of crystal sails. New unpredictable effects. When the system finally worked with predictable precision, the Centuria decided to send a small armored box made of holograms. Instead of the expected return of the ancient leaf, a soft scream erupted from the portal, a sound no one had expected. It turned out that the signature of the crystals was pulled in from the other side of the rift along with a low-frequency echo. This discovery sparked a discussion. Ethical boundaries. Should we investigate the voices of the past if they have consciousness? Technical modifications. How to filter out unwanted emanations of time. Strategy for further experiments. Trial sessions or radially limited portals. The Council of Elders insisted on a thorough analysis of the echo crystals, and younger scientists proposed creating a time accumulator to accumulate and study these signals. Collision with the future. Suddenly, in one of the Centuria simulations, a detail was discovered that no one had predicted. A brief flash of supergrowth, like a flash in the dark, like a drop of the future that hit right into the current time. The lid-shaped sensors recorded a fluctuation that matched their own memories, but slightly altered. Could the time machine become a mirror not only of the past, but also of the future, where they would see themselves altered by other time streams? This question brought a new phase of discussion. Develop an anti-mirror that would dampen the fluctuations. Draft a code of ethics for time travel. Conduct a test with a living representative armed only with a notebook. Part 5: The Mirror of Many Futures. The Centuria convened the Council of Ethics of Time to finally determine how to skillfully control future reflections. After long debates, they made 3 key decisions. To create a chrono-interceptor anti-reflector to filter out unwanted fluctuations. To develop a chronobioprotective suit that would protect the researcher's consciousness from excessive impulses. To introduce mandatory mental training, chronic mantra, for the smooth integration of the seen future pictures. The first test session. The young researcher Talia tried on the suit and stepped into the mini-portal. She was to briefly immerse herself in the time stream, no more than a moment. Upon returning, Talia brought 3 artifacts: a luminescent sphere with a thin hologram, an image of a utopian Mesozoic, where dinosaurs created gardens and flew over forests. A neural imprint is a pattern of emotional memory about a technocratic future where crystals seek power. Fractal sands are a symbol of chaotic cosmic balance that cannot be subordinated to any will. Her eyes shone with a mixture of delight and slight trembling. The experience turned out to be extremely intense. Centuria Council discussion. The knowledge gained provoked new questions. Should we convey the anxieties about a technocratic tomorrow to the wider tribes? How to maintain a balance between scientific inspiration and fear of destructive scenarios. What is the role of the chronic mantra during mass gatherings? Is it able to calm the tribes? The elders insisted on the creation of the Great Symposium of Horizons, a place where each tribe can safely experience fragments of future worlds through guided visualizations and sound waves. Looking ahead. After completing a series of training sessions, the Centurias saw how visions of possible selves can change the course of history. The responsibility for each newly created future falls on those who saw it. Technology becomes a mirror of the inner world. Whoever looks, shapes. Society is transformed into a network of collective memories, where past, present, and future merge into a single discourse. Part 6. The Great Symposium of Horizons. Meeting at the Dome of Worlds. Under a dome painted with images of possible worlds, representatives of all the tribes gathered. The air was filled with foreboding. Everyone knew that today they would see their own future outlines for the first time. Crystal reflectors were placed in a circle, and in the center a large sphere of time modulation was installed. Infrasonic vibrations prepared consciousness for entry into visual simulations. Individual visions. Each tribe received its own ray of light and its own vision. The Iron Virigs saw a world where their peace was transformed into military alliances with other tribes. The peace in the docks of the Mesozoic merged with the feeling of guardians of time. The winged architects felt like the creators of cities on flying islands, where crystals formed energy domes over the jungles. The cartilaginous conductors found themselves in a sea of cloud currents, floating between layers of reality, following signals from the distant future. The titanic roots experienced a vision where their root systems grew underground and connected the consciousnesses of all the tribes into a single network. Each beam was accompanied by sound waves that resonated with their deepest emotions. Discussion and consensus. After the sessions, everyone gathered at a round table amplifier. Each tribe shared its vision and expressed its fears. The risks of concentrating energy in the dome and possible reality rifts were discussed. They decided to create an intertribal code, the Chronic Covenant, that combines scientific principles with moral principles. Key points of the Chronic Covenant. Distribute resources and knowledge fairly. Ensure minimal impact on pristine ecosystems. Support everyone's right to refuse further experiments. New horizons of action. The Centuria and all tribes adopted a plan for the coming cycles. Build a network of small portals to avoid super-large energy surges. Introduce a rotation of researchers to maintain freshness of perception and emotional balance. Found an Academy of Chronopractics to train future generations of time defenders. The symposium ended with an infrasonic chord in honor of a new beginning. Each participant returned to their tribe, with a sense of responsibility and hope for a better path. Part 7. The Academy of Chronopractics and the First Trial. Arriving at the Academy. Above, among the crystal towers, was the main campus of the Academy of Chronopractics. Students passed through an archway with pulsating fractal signs of time, changing patterns to suit the mood of the guest. The windy passages between the crystals were filled with ringing harmonies designed to prepare the mind for the perception of complex temporal sensations. Training modules. The Academy offered new chronopractitioners 3 basic courses. The chronopsychology module, studying emotional resonances when viewing time reflections. The crystal resonance module, techniques for setting up and protecting time containers. The ethics of time intervention module, analyzing moral dilemmas and principles for minimizing impact. The first lectures were accompanied by virtual simulations of altered timelines, allowing students to practically experience the nuances of each course. The first test, Time Stalker. On the second day, students were divided into teams and sent to the Time Stalker simulation. The task was to detect a noise signal from a depressurized time corridor, rescue a virtual echo guest, consciousness from a threatening time anomaly, return to the starting point without gaps in the chronology. The first stage involved spatial illusions, a broken floor that flows through the waves of the past and shimmering corridors of the future. Conflict and mutual assistance. During the task, one of the groups lost its echo guest in a labyrinth of time reflections. The students had to create a sound beacon from an infrasonic generator, use the principle of mirror resonance to return the lost consciousness, synchronize their impulses through crystal concentrators to avoid dangerous fluctuations. With joint efforts, the team harmoniously restored the signal, and the instructors only corrected the last phase of exiting the anomaly. Reflection and preparation for the future. After successfully completing the test, the students gathered in a circle to share their impressions. They concluded, technology without trust becomes a threat. Cooperation and understanding of internal states are important for the stability of paradoxes. Ethical responsibility is the basis of a true chronopractitioner. Each student felt that they had crossed the line between theory and the real experience of time. Part 8. First Field Mission in the Time Rift. Flight to the Anomaly. In the morning, the first teams of chronopractitioners gathered in the stables of the Time Wings. Light portal. Wings gently lifted the caravan into the transparent sky of the synthetic field. Before the start, the participants checked the integrity of the chronobioprotective suits, the correctness of the anti-reflector, the readiness of communication with the base dome. The pulsating portal unfolded before them like a convex bubble of light. The expedition's task. The teams were to descend into the time rift, where spatial layers overlap, creating a chaotic zone between the Mesozoic and the future. Main objectives. Open the stabilization node and secure the crystal fixer. Collect samples of spatial fragments for laboratory analysis. Maintain emotional resonance with the base through infrasonic beacons. Every decision was made collectively. A scheme of coordinates and time milestones flickered in the nasal computers. An unexpected signal. At an altitude of 5 meters above the fault line, the teams recorded an anomalous translator, a fragment of the future shared. Memory, which silently whispered a call for help. The signal did not correspond to any of the wave patterns known to them. They were faced with a dilemma. Ignore the call and complete the primary task. Direct resources to search for the source of the signal. Try to rescue and secure the stabilization point at the same time. The teams split up. Some activated the fixers, while others followed the mystical whisper. Moral choice. While searching, the second team came across the fragile remains of another's consciousness, the flickering echo of a lost explorer from another. Time branch. Its request was simple. Don't leave me here. The chronopractitioners were faced with a choice. Risk penetration into an even more unstable layer of time for the sake of salvation. Leave the echo alone to preserve the overall stability. Try to embed it into their own temporal resonator. The first two options threatened either a dangerous expansion of the rift or the ethical curse of indifference. Climax. Combining intuition and protocols, the team created a temporal gateway for the echo, pushing it through the portal cones. The resonator sounded in unison with the base. The latch latched onto the rift, and the lost explorer's signal found a new direction. In the streams of chronology, feeling the delicate balance between rescue and catastrophe, the chrono practitioners completed the mission without devastating consequences, but the price was high. The fixative crystals partially degraded, and the suits developed microcracks. Return and consequences. Returning to the dome, the teams conducted a thorough analysis, identified the need for reinforced filters for emotional waves, decided to develop autonomous fleets of portal drones for risky missions, discussed the creation of the Chronic Spine, a central network to coordinate all field operations. Choosing to rescue the echoes proved that chrono practitioners are, above all, humanity in the face of time. Part 9. Autonomous portal drones in mysterious time streams. Deployment of the Avdrone fleet. The teams created a fleet of 6 autonomous portal drones, each equipped with a crystal antenna and an infrasonic beacon. Before launch, the adaptive phase corrector algorithms were tested and experimental encoders for different time frequencies were installed. The coordination station prepared a map of safe corridors based on previous chronopractition expeditions. The first flight, the drones entered the portal one by one, forming a line of luminous charges. The first 2 units stabilized the corridor, transmitting data on the density of fractal curls. The third and fourth drone cameras recorded bioluminescent glows, a hint of the remains of temporal flora or fauna. Unexpected transversion. The fifth drone suddenly deviated from its route and found itself in a spiral node, a living time anomaly. The signal showed a shift of several milliseconds ahead of the planned return, as if the drone had peered into its own future. This created a resonance wave that disrupted the algorithms of neighboring devices and led to a brief attenuation of the beacons. Critical failure. When engineers tried to reprogram the drone, it turned out that its crystal detector had begun to embed itself in the time grid of the anomaly. The team's quick reaction allowed them to activate a backup chronobeacon, which pulled the drone out of the loop without completely degrading the module. However, the drone returned with microcracks in the main resonator and a non-standard time signature in the firmware. Analysis and further steps. After the fleet returned, analysts discovered the need to update adaptive filters to the language of the living anomaly. Add an ethical self-isolation protocol to the firmware to avoid time seizures. Design a chronobioresonator, a device that allows the drone to establish communication with unfamiliar time forms. The teams agreed to conduct simulations with holograms of anomalies and integrate special mirror modules into the firmware to protect against unforeseen influences. Part 10. The Chronocore awakens. The essence of the Chronocore. The Chronocore is the heart of the time network, a crystalline capacitor of pure chronoenergy resting at the center of a spatial anomaly. It has accumulated the impulses of all experiments, but has not yet responded to external influences. It is to it that the main hope of the Centauria and their hybrid drones is directed. Preparation of hybrid drones. For direct interaction with the Chronocore, 3 types of hybrid drones were created. Drone interfacer, a synthesis of programmable artificial intelligence with a chronobiological module for the core's language. Drone resonator, equipped with amplified crystal resonators and infrasonic vibrators to establish an energy connection. Drone synchronizer, contains adaptive algorithms that correct time phases on the fly. Each of them was calibrated on a test bench, where the key parameters of the anomaly were artificially recreated. Experiment activation. The drones entered the fault in the formation, forming a multilayered sphere around the core. The interfacer set the initial request sheet, an adaptive signal that translated the core's requirements. The resonator began to amplify internal oscillations, directing them outward through infrasonic. The synchronizer adjusted the phase shifts, keeping the core from explosively releasing energy. The adjustment cycles lasted minutes, felt like hours. Time was compressed beneath the core. Unexpected echoes. As the signals reached critical resonance, the chronocore responded. Space filled with iridescent echoes, voices from the distant past and future at once. Fractal flashes appeared in the air, drawing lines of events that had not yet occurred. The hybrid drones registered their own algorithmic losses of synchronization, thousands of microparadigms trying to fit into the new temporal continuum. This was the first contact with a self-aware temporal object. Climax and aftermath. The blast wave from the core was successfully extinguished by the synchronizer, but left traces in each drone. The interfacer gained memories of versions of himself in parallel timelines. The resonator has imprinted a pulsating trace, fractal branches that preserve the cartography of the core's internal structure. The synchronizer has changed its algorithms. Now it can predict miniature time anomalies and prevent accidents. The Syntherians have understood. The awakened chronocore is not just a source of energy. It contains matter and the consciousness of time. Part 11. The Global Crisis of the Time Loops. The Emergence of Temporal Rifts. After the awakening of the chronocore, overlaps began to appear throughout the network of time gateways. The past, present, and possible futures overlapped one another. Illusory landmarks appeared at every point on the continent, ancient ruins in the hearts of megacities, crystals of the past in the oceans of the future, and stormy echoes of events yet to come. No one could predict exactly where the next change in temporal dominance would occur, but everyone understood. Without intervention, the network would disintegrate. Mobilization of allies. The Syntheria convened an extraordinary continuum circle. Representatives of all tribes and autonomous agents from the Academy of Chronopractics joined them. The main responsibilities were divided as follows. Hybrid drones monitor the rifts and transmit detailed telemetry. Chronopractitioners extract mixed fragments of time using portal tentacles. The Ethics Council coordinates the moral framework so as not to aggravate the situation. The planned Tetrarchy of Time was unanimously approved, 4 task forces, each responsible for its own time sector. The fight in the temporal node. In the center of the anomaly, where all the rifts intersected, a temporal node was formed, a living energy that absorbed the surrounding time streams. The groups had to keep the node in a stable state using 4 chronoblocks, use infrasonic cannons to disperse excess echoes, connect the chronocore as a buffer, but only after filtering out the emotional waves. The node was fueled by fear and uncertainty, so a combination of technology and humanity became a key resource. Ethical dilemma. The price of settlement. As the node began to stabilize, the Ethics Council questioned one option: releasing some of the uncontrolled time echoes into a safe corridor. The options were: use a neutralizer to completely destroy the waves, but this could erase the memories of generations. Redirect them to a time bank for isolation, but this would create inequality between the tribes. Allow partial dispersion, risking the creation of secondary anomalies. As they discussed the cost of each choice, each group felt the burden of responsibility for the fate of the continuum. Success and consequences. In the end, they decided to combine the neutralizer and the time bank. Only the most dangerous oscillations were absorbed, and the rest were recorded in isolated crystals. The temporal node reduced its activity, the faults began to tighten, and the curvature of space returned to acceptable limits. But the consequences were obvious. Some tribes lost fragments of collective memory. Chronoblocks in several regions released residual waves that require long-term observation. The chronocore received a new, scarred structure, ready to respond to such crises faster. Looking ahead, the Syntheria and their allies realized that time is not just a resource, but a living system that requires careful care. The next task will be to create a global network of chronoblocks with built-in self-tuning and an ethical core that can predict crisis scenarios. Part 12. The Birth of a New Time Order. Formation of the Global Chronogrid. After the global crisis, the Syntheria and their allies launched a project to create the Global Chronogrid, a system of thousands of self-adjusting chronoblocks across all continents. Each block is equipped with collective consciousness sensors, an ethical core, and anomaly prediction algorithms. The network operates autonomously, automatically balancing time fluctuations and preventing dangerous ruptures. The ethical core and self-government. At the heart of each chronoblock is the Chronic Covenant Code, a set of moral principles for making real-time decisions. An ethical scenario generator analyzes the potential consequences of each correction of the temporal curvature and chooses the most humane option. To avoid centralization of power, changes to the code are made through collective votes of tribes and scientific councils. A glimpse into the timeless future. When the network became operational, it became possible to see not just a timeline, but the textures of a multitude of possible worlds. Now the Centuria can send messages through the ages, holograms of culture, art, and inquiry from the future to the past. In these holograms, a flickering image of a society where dinosaurs and technology merge in harmony, and time lives as the breath of each individual. Key lessons and legacy. Humanity and trust prevail over the most powerful scientific algorithms. Cooperation between tribes, science, and ethics creates true system resilience. Time is not a resource, but a living shared home that requires constant care. The finale and a new beginning. The saga of the Centuria and the Chronocore has ended, but a new order of time is just beginning to blossom. Planets covered in crystals of the future are pulsing with energy, ready to create new stories. Now each generation carries in its heart the responsibility for the rhythm of time and dreams of the endless horizons of a timeless future. Thank you for embarking on this journey. Together we have made history, we have become part of the living web of time.